So Joanna, you have a couple of links ready.
I do.
Okay, perfect.
Yes. If you could also spotlight me, please.
Thank you for the reminder. I will do that. All right, we'll start in about another minute here. Great. I see we have a few people who joined. Thanks for coming to this session. We'll start at the top of the hour. Right, it looks like we've reached the top of the hour, so let's get started. Thank you so much for joining us today in this Glocal session. I hope that you've been enjoying Glocal this week. The session that we're starting now is called From Evidence to Action, Strengthening Dissemination and Uptake of IEG Evaluative Evidence at the World Bank Group. Let me introduce this amazing group of people that are joining me today. First, we have Joanna Janukatis. She's a knowledge management analyst at IEG. Alexandra Harry, an external affairs officer, and Arunjana Das, communications focal points. And my name is Darlene Christopher. I'm a senior knowledge and learning officer. All of us work for the Independent Evaluation Group. We are in the knowledge and communications unit there, and we're part of the World Bank Group. Before we start, let me just give a little bit of background information about the World Bank. It's not a traditional bank. We are an international development organization. We provide financial products and technical assistance to governments around the world to help reduce poverty. Now, as I mentioned, we're part of the Independent Evaluation Group, or IEG, and our purpose is to assess whether the World Bank Group's work is making a difference. We work to ensure that lessons and evidence that are generated from the bank's work get back to decision makers and people who can act on them. And that's the challenge. That's what we're exploring today, is how we use AI to help with our knowledge and communications work and help us get the word out, get evidence in creative ways to the people who can make a difference. I also wanted to mention that IEG has an AI strategy, and we'll put the link to this strategy in chat because it's on our external website. So IEG put together an AI strategy just to really reaffirm our commitment to scale up the use of AI deliberately. And I'll mention a few of the core principles that you see there. Quality and rigor first. So we use AI as an enabler. While we always test for accuracy, we always keep a human in the loop. We use AI for efficiency gains without compromising quality. Oops, sorry about that. And we also abide by the World Bank Group's responsible AI use guidance. Now, a lot of what's written in the strategy is for our evaluators and their evaluation work. And I'm just reminding you that we are not evaluators. We come from the knowledge and communications unit. And that's what we are here to talk about is how we use AI in that role to support our work, to make our work faster, to help us with some first pass tasks and get us started quickly on preparing work, on retrieving information, but then we rely on our expertise and our judgment to determine whether or not the what AI is generated is helpful for us. And so we'll be very candid today, and basically we'd love to learn with you by sharing examples of how we use AI in our work. So we're about to share how we use AI in our work. Before we do that, we'd like to know how you're using AI in your work. So let me start with a poll. Joanna's going to put the link in chat, or you can scan the QR code with your phone. This is anonymous, and let us know how you're using AI. I see you have a few votes coming in. Searching for and retrieving information seems to be the winner right now, which is I definitely use this every day to support my work. And also people are using it for summarizing. We'll talk about that at the very end. And a little bit, we'll talk about some people are using it for drafting documents. We'll talk about that as well. So thank you for sharing how you're using AI. We have one more question for you before we get started, and this will just help us understand who you are and how you use AI. If you would like to share with us, what do you find most challenging when using AI for your knowledge and communications work? And this is just an open-ended text. Welcome to type whatever comes to mind here. I see a theme so far with knowing if AI is right or not. This is so true. Wow, a lot of people kind of in that space of if what we're working with is accurate, and this is a huge question that also is part of our work as well, that it's one thing to have AI generate something for you, and then it's another thing to know if it's true or not. So we'll talk about how we do that as well with some of our approaches to using AI. So thank you so much for responding to those polls. And I see some people are putting in chat as well, some really relevant notes here that we deal with as well. So we're going to talk about using AI in our work in 3 different ways. And the first one is using AI for early drafts. Some of you said you do this. We'll share an example of AI with presentation slides and another with podcast scripts. And I'm going to turn to Joanna to start this section.
Thank you so much, Darlene, and welcome, colleagues. Very excited to talk to you today about using AI for early drafts. So discuss building an internal communications product with AI complementing human experience. We're going to look at using an expert's blog to develop a set of slides for presentation. So in the next few minutes, I'll talk a little bit about the key considerations when partnering with AI on creative work and the investments you need to make, the approach taken with the time you have allocated and the resources available to you, the decisions you will make within this framework, and then a snapshot of the approach. Next slide. So let's get started. And why are we doing this? So AI has a powerful synthesis ability, as you know, to produce drafts in a very short time period. So it improves our speed and efficiency. And I'd say in my experience, it's about 50% faster. And you gain the value of a creative partnership to create a PowerPoint for, in this case, for internal presentation. So just to take a quick look at the approach we've been using. First, we're identifying the best performing model. Externally, for publicly disclosed products, have been using Gamma. And then internally for World Bank Group only content, using proprietary tools within the bank. So uploading a tech language heavy blog into an AI tool like Gamma, and then in parallel to an internal AI tool, and then creating 2 drafts and comparing, contrasting using cross-model validation. So using a custom prompt in both, the same prompt, and specifying the PowerPoint template, tone, design preferences, number of slides, etc. Secondly, we're producing an initial outline in the first draft using AI Assist, as I just described. Thirdly, conducting manual research and validation within our communications team. Fourth, and this is what you were alluding to with your responses to the Slido question, so validation by a subject matter expert. So we don't go forward without bringing in that tacit experiential knowledge and nuance from your subject matter expert and verify the accuracy of the content. And then lastly, the final PowerPoint, your final presentation that you can use for your internal event in this case. And next slide. And this is an example of a prompt. Again, this is what I might use for an internal presentation. You're a designer, content creator, so you're providing the role, you're providing the content, the task, the requirements, and providing an example. And then in this case, we used a blog to create a presentation for our 30-minute talk series, and about 10 slides, and it using the approach that described in the previous slide. And next slide. So lastly, just some key considerations to keep in mind. So maintaining an awareness of the difference between delivery versus experimentation. So balancing and budgeting your time and resources based on your intention. You'll need time to compare and critique your work, as different models have different strengths and weaknesses. And also consider evolving models and stay curious. So test the capacity of your AI tools and have an experimental approach. And secondly, consider that adding specifics to your custom prompt will make you more successful. And you can also create multiple versions for different audiences. Third, consider AI as a partner on your creative team. So for writers and designers, this means you're building first drafts from which content can be pulled for your final presentation, and always validate with your SMEs. AI and human supervision yield the best performance and outcomes. And lastly, manage your expectations. Manage expectations of clients and management, knowing the time and resources that you'll need to complete the project, and understand your constraints and capacity limitations. And that's all I have for now. Let me turn over to Arujana for another example.
Thank you so much, Joanna, and thank you, Darlene. Welcome, colleagues. So happy to see you all. So some of the considerations that Joanna had mentioned also apply to what I'm going to share in the next few minutes. And the use case that I will be talking about would be podcast production. So let me differentiate. Some of you are probably, or most of you are probably already aware of what's an AI-generated podcast versus an AI-assisted podcast production workflow. Sorry, it's a mouthful, but you already know the difference, but let me still kind of underline the distinction before we actually begin. Yes. So AI-generated podcasts would be scripts and voices that are generated by AI. There would still be a degree of manual validation just to make sure that AI got it right. And some of you had already highlighted some of your concerns in the Slido questions regarding trust and verifiability. So those things still apply to AI-generated scripts and voices. The kinds of disclosure, transparency, consent, ethical requirements that you can expect from AI-generated scripts and voices apply here. Now, if there is an actual person that we are trying to replicate, then that would require consent and thinking about privacy laws as well. So there are a lot of those considerations we need to keep in mind. In terms of examples, I've provided two examples. First is there is a podcast by the World Bank Group. It's called Accelerating Development, Ideas for Impact, and I'll have more on it in the next couple of slides. But this is an example of a podcast that was fully AI generated, but there was human validation. The second, it's a slightly different context. It's called Making of a Nation, America at 250. This is a project between the National Archives in Washington, D.C. and Google Arts and Culture, and we'll go a little bit more into it. That's another example of not just AI-generated podcasts, but sort of an AI-generated multimedia package. Now, the second is what we are trying to do here in IEG is AI-assisted podcast production. So as the term implies, you have AI-assisted tasks, but the voices, that's from a live capture of voices. That's a live conversation. There's still disclosure, transparency, and ethical requirements. They're slightly different, but we still disclose how we use AI for that. And the example that I'll go a little bit more into is a podcast that I'm working on right now. It's on contribution analysis, which stay tuned for it because it's coming very soon. Next, please. Now, this is a workflow that we generated. We use which is a proprietary World Bank Group AI tool, and Claude. So we try to practice what we preach. We're disclosing the use of AI here. I won't go over the entire workflow, but this is how I kind of worked on the contribution analysis podcast. You begin with the evaluation report or findings or whatever document you're working with. Then you may need to speak with evaluation TTLs or other relevant experts. And all this feed into how you prepare the script and the narrative, which would include sort of an intro, the questions, and the flow of the conversation. So that's where the human review or editorial judgment comes in. Then you record with live guests, and in terms of post-production, you can use AI to create transcripts. You can use it for translation into multiple languages, but making sure, again, that the translations are accurate. Next, please. Yes. So this is the example that I was talking about. This is the fully AI generated podcast. And what this offers is scale. Scale in terms of being able to create a very accessible podcast of content, original content, which might not be very accessible to a general audience. And this podcast is also available. Maybe you are not able to see it here, but it's available in multiple languages. So if we were not to use AI for this might have been prohibitive in terms of cost and time. So in terms of resources, AI does make certain things very much easier, again, with human validation. Next, please. Yes, this is the one that I was talking about, which is a slightly different context from the kind of development context we work in. Now, America is celebrating its 250th year of independence, and the National Archives, they are collaborating with Google Arts and Culture to create this multimedia package. So what they did was they took some of, for example, personal letters by George Washington, some of the documents of the founding fathers, including some that you see on the screen here. So they took all those sources and they made them accessible in different kinds of formats. So I encourage you to explore this entire archive, I have the link right here. Next, please. And they use the tool called Google LLM Notebook to do this. So to give an example, this is one of the packages that's part of the entire Making of a Nation package. And you would see, if you on the right hand side, you would see there are different formats that they've made this available. And there's also a video explainer. There's an audio, which is what we were talking about, the audio overview, or kind of a podcast. So you could certainly create all these different elements. I knew Benjamin Franklin as a scientist before I knew him as a founding father, but this also kind of revealed another aspect of Benjamin Franklin to me. So to an interested audience who may not be a subject matter expert, this kind of a tool will help kind of reach them and make them more interested into your topic. Next, please. Now, I also tried to see if we could experiment. Now, Joanna was talking about experimentation, right? So we tried to use Google LLM with some of our own products. And the one that I had mentioned, the contribution analysis podcast, is the one that I tried it on. So I encourage you to try that as well. As you would see on the screen, you could choose one of these formats: deep dive, brief, critique, debate. And you, as the producer, you could direct the tool to focus on particular aspects based on a source. You would need to provide a source. And in this case, the source was a contribution analysis guidance note. And I encourage you to check that out as well. It's just quite informative. Next, please. Here's where I was a bit disappointed, but maybe we should be thankful that AI is not that great yet. So I asked Google LLM to create an infographic, and it produced a pretty bad infographic. So I don't know, maybe I should be happy about that. But even if this infographic doesn't quite stand up to the standards of IEG, I think it's still a tool worth exploring. Next, please. Now, here's the question: when do we use AI-generated audio versus live capture? So the first is when we are trying to capture tacit knowledge. Now, what do we mean by tacit knowledge? Tacit knowledge could be knowledge that is not documented, knowledge that lives in our head, and it needs to be extracted. It could be through oral historical archives, or it could just be through conversations. Then the other kinds of knowledge would be knowledge coming from lived experiences. Now, AI has not gotten to that yet, and this is why having multiple experts congregate and talk about a topic of interest, that's where the collective intelligence rises. And the second is shared discernment. This is a term that's used in Pope Leo's encyclical Magnificat Humanitas. And shared discernment in this case means a process of collective reflection, deliberation, and interpretation. And it's similar to what we are trying to do here. There's a reason why you chose to attend this session today instead of asking AI to give you kind of a summary of what you were trying to find, right? So we're hoping to do a kind of shared discernment ourselves. And that's where we need human knowledge and expertise. Next, please. And there are some use cases. Again, I encourage you to check out our Learning and Lending podcast. Actually, this is a screenshot of the podcast. This is the last one that we did. We did not use AI for it, but this is a great example of when that shared discernment is useful, because if you look closely, the experts, and one of them, our very own Darlene, she was the host. So they actually talked about things that would not have been recorded in any kind of database that AI has access to. I will stop here, and if there are any questions, I'm happy to take them. Over to you, Darlene.
Oh, great. Thank you so much, Joanna and Arunjana. Let me stop sharing for a moment. We'd like to pause for a few minutes and just see if there are questions from the audience before we go on to our next segment. So we were just talking about using AI for creating early drafts of slides and whether or not to use it with a podcast. I see we have one question. Can the World Bank recommend when AI model to get started. I think we're going to touch on this in just a moment because we're going to do some comparisons of what tools work when. I think that my response to this, and then I'll see if anyone on the team wants to say, is that it really depends, and you really have to experiment. You really have to just test and understand what different models can do. They're good at certain tasks and not others, and it's a experimentation. Anything else anyone wants to add on this question? And please keep the questions coming. What models does the World Bank use? Oh, yeah, go ahead, Arinjana.
I would just qualify what Darlene just said with that this is not a formal recommendation from IEG or the World Bank Group. So whatever you're hearing here, whatever tools we're discussing, again, these are not formal recommendations. It's just a result of our experimentation. I think that needs to be specified.
Yes. We use a lot of different models. We're very lucky to have an internal system set up that we can use within our own environment. And we have access to a variety of models. And again, we're constantly testing them and seeing, because the models are always changing, and seeing what works best for certain tasks. And it's an ongoing challenge to keep up with all the changes. All right, we'll take one more here. Oh, reception of AI generated podcasts. What do you think about the reception of AI generated podcasts by the M&E community? I don't know that I know anything about what the community is saying about this, but let me see if Arunjana, have you heard anything about this since you work on podcasts?
I haven't heard anything about this, and also the World Bank, the podcast that I pointed out, the last one I saw that they produced was April 2025. So yeah, I wouldn't know how the community is receiving that.
Yeah, thank you for the question, Catalina. Let's continue on this journey. We are going to go to our next topic, which is using AI for social media. And Alex is going to share some examples of how he uses AI when working with images on social media. So over to you, Alex.
Hey everyone. So let's start with the context. The context is we have one of our colleagues that went for retirement, and he was an avid poet, and every single time he was sharing some poems with us. For his retirement party, he decided to write a piece, and he handed us an image. So to acknowledge that, to acknowledge his great career, our DG, Sabine Bernabe, wanted to post on LinkedIn and copy the poem. The issue was we had an image. And as you know, we have different way of dealing with the image. How do we take the text out? We just copy paste, we just read it and copy paste and see how it goes. We can also use some extraction. We can read the text, and now with all the tools we have, it will write it for us. So my goal was to try different models to see who will give me the best result out of that. So as you can see, I tried ChatGPT, Claude, Copilot, and Gemini. All of those are available to us within the World Bank. So, Darlene, there is 4 models, 1 winner, 1 big loser. The big loser was Copilot. Once again, I want to emphasize the fact that this is on that case, and this is Gemini that we use now, and probably a few months from now, we will have different result, and we can come back with another presentation if you're interested, probably next year for Global. So Copilot has over 94% accuracy with 12 errors. 10 was because of text misreading. The second and third place that are tight is actually ChatGPT and Claude with only 2 errors. One was the text, one was punctuation. And the winner was actually Gemini with 100% currency. So, darling, if you mind clicking another time, you will see all the issues and all, especially from Copilot. So Copilot made a lot of mistakes. He interpreted some text like I highlighted them. Namaste became more tenses. He made some mistakes on anxiety, which changed the whole sentence into curiosity. So to give you an idea is in my prompt, which was very basic, I explained, look, you have the image on the left with the text. I want you to extract it and don't read what you can see on the images. Especially you see there is one image with Andy's pictures and the signature and some text and some Arabic text. So if you don't ask them, it's going to extract everything. So in my prompt, I asked to stop at meeting, but I made a mistake in my prompts. What I did is meetings. So some of the models like Gemini or ChatGPT fix the meeting, didn't fix meetings into meeting. He actually made an extra mistakes because my prompt was not accurate. While Claude and Gemini fixed it. So that's where I want to go. Now the question is AI versus human. The problem here is I spend more time checking the accuracy of the extraction because it's also for us, but it's also for our VP, our general DG that wanted to communicate about it. We didn't have a choice. We couldn't make a mistake. So rewriting it will have taken me way less time than comparing the different models. Even with Gemini, I trust him now. I will have to double check again if I do with another text. So that's my take. The other example I have for you is collage image creation. So my level in Photoshop is advanced. I can say that I'm the same with Canva. Canva came out a few weeks ago, 1 month ago, with a new model, Canva AI, that helped you generate images. So the context here was simple. We wanted to communicate on all our snapshot, and the snapshot it highlights critical findings and recommendations from corporate, thematic, and country program evaluation. We have right now 11 of them, and I wanted to highlight the boss as it's 2 pages. I wanted to highlight boss images. So I had either a choice of making them next to each other, but it didn't look good, and we came up with an idea of making a collage where they're all on top of each other with 2 of them on front. So I'd prepare on Photoshop, and I decided to try Canva. So there is 1 winner, 1 loser. You will guess, darling, the loser is me. It took me 25 minutes on Photoshop to create the same thing. Of course, there is a way to do it. A pro will do it probably in 10, 15 minutes, and we can also do it with script. But generate the script will take some time to do it. So I use Canva AI, and it took me 5 minutes with the right prompt. Of course, all my images were ready to start with, but just the fact of saying, look, I'm uploading all those images, you put them all on the size I defined, and I want you to resize them, shuffle them, and have this effect with a little bit of shadow and a little bit of contour around it. And that's what I got in 5 minutes. Of course, I tweak it a little bit to have the right arrangement, but it didn't take me more than 5 minutes. Of course, there is different version that I share with colleagues to make sure that that's what they wanted, but the initial draft took me 5 minutes. That's about it.
Thank you so much, Alex. It's those examples are great because you shared an example of where AI, it really even slowed you down. And then this example, this beautiful image, I love this example of what Canva helped you create. So thank you for that. Thanks for sharing how you use AI with your social media work. We are going to turn to a third type of AI use in our work, and that is using AI for research and analysis. So doing summarizing, synthesizing. This is another piece of our work that we do. We produce very large evaluations, a few hundred pages, and Alex showed you the snapshot, so we reduce them down to 2 pages, and sometimes we also do summaries. And let me turn to Joanna to talk about a process that she uses and with an example.
Absolutely. Thanks, Darlene. So yes, in this example, so Arujana and I worked with an evaluator, a subject matter expert, on crafting a response to World Bank Group Management on pulling IEG's evaluative evidence over the past 5 years related to crisis response. And we had a very short timeline, so we used AI to complement human judgment quite successfully. We were able to meet the deadline. So I think it was both experimentation and delivery, which doesn't often happen. So initial step, we were establishing the scope, identifying our organizing principle, and then developing a customized prompt. From there, we prepared our data set and exclusions. We didn't use all the reports. We used those that we felt would be most likely to have relevant content. Identifying our AI tools for a structured search. So we used the same prompt in every tool that we used. Analyzing, identifying the key findings. So in this section, the subject matter expert was quite heavily involved at this point, and selecting the content that we would include in this brief. And then lastly, with our finished brief, it ended up being about 10 pages with the bibliography and methods section. And we requested feedback from management and then submitted the final brief to World Bank Group Management. So ended up being quite a nice project and worked well, was successful, and a good model, I think, for us going forward. Back to you, Darlene.
All right, thanks. And now we're going to switch to Arunjana to talk a little bit more about AI synthesis.
Just to add to what Joanna mentioned, identifying the scope. Joanna, remind me again, we worked with around 60 plus documents, I believe. And as Darlene had mentioned, each evaluation report is 100 plus pages. So we worked with anything between 6,000 to 8,000 plus pages worth of report. So being able to gather, synthesize that information within a very short time would not have been possible without the use of AI plus human judgment. And here you see with the pink box, it's a slide from an organization called the Taiku. It talks about when to use an AI agent versus when to not. And you can read this in your leisure, but we could potentially use an AI agent for synthesizing work, but I just want to highlight that even so, the importance of human oversight and validation, it cannot be overstated. That is non-negotiable, especially when we work in a field like development, where actual human lives are concerned. I would just highlight that, and over to you, Darlene.
Great, thank you. Thank you both so much for sharing all those examples. We would now like to turn to participants. I'm going to stop sharing slides and see what questions you have for any of our panelists. Any questions you have about these examples or anything to do with using AI for communications and knowledge work. I see a couple coming in. Catalina is asking of the tools you've explored, which are most useful for developing products aimed at decision makers and M&E. Could you share an inspiring evidence using one of those tools? So This is a great question. I think it's very context specific, because people are people, and it depends on the type of decision maker that you're talking about, and you know your stakeholders, you know your audience. So I don't know that the answer is AI specific. It's really about knowing your audience. But let me see if anyone in the panel wants to make a comment about this. Yeah, go ahead, Arunchana.
Yeah, just to add to what you said, Darlene, the slide on crisis response note, that's the one that I think would be the most relevant for this question, because the note itself was aimed for internal use, but senior management who were decision makers, and they were looking for very operational lessons. And the tool that we used was a World Bank proprietary AI tool. It's called My, but again, please do not think of this as IEG or World Bank Group recommendation, but in my personal experience, outside of the World Bank Group tools, I have found Claude to be very effective. You could select different options. You could select things like low effort, you could select things like this is for deep research. So, and I'm not being paid by Anthropic, just to be clear about that. But yeah, I use Claude for a lot of my personal research work as well. I'll stop there.
Great, thank you. Let me go on to the next question, and maybe this is one I can turn to Joanna to answer. How do you get started using AI? Where's a good place to really just kind of dip your toe in the water?
Absolutely. So I would approach it in two ways. One is self-study, making time in your day to take some courses. There are many, many excellent courses online. Coursera, for example, has a number of different courses that you can take, self-paced. And then secondly, that experimentation that Aruja and Alex are talking about. So just being open to innovation, being curious, making time to experiment. It's difficult when you have a delivery and you have a timeline to try something new. So it is good to build in time to experiment. And say Alex's example of in social media posts, checking a manual process against the AI process and seeing which is faster and more efficient. So that would be my response. Over to you, Darlene.
Thanks. And I'll just add, I would also recommend doing it in a low stakes environment. So if you're going to do what Joanna did and generate slides for an internal meeting where it's you and your colleagues, and play around with it and see how AI does for you before you go into broader audiences where the stakes are higher. William asks, how do you deal with the disclosure of use of AI in your published products? And we do disclose the use of AI in our published products. This is also covered in our AI strategy, and I encourage you to take a look at that. That link is earlier in the chat. Let's see, Jesse has a great comment about using AI to verify its accuracy. Thanks for this comment, Jesse. Let's see if Alex wants to also join in here.
Hi, Jesse. I thought the same thing, actually. Asked AI several times, different model. Are you sure about that? Can you double check all the things? Same things. I didn't do just, please extract the text and looked at it. It was much more, are you really sure about that? Can you double check the punctuation? Can you, another thing that came sometimes is the formatting. As you can see, the poem is formatted in a certain way. Some of them give me completely out formatted. It was not formatted at all the same way. So I asked several times. I had to make sure. Then after figure out where was the issue, I pointed out and saying, look, are you sure this is? Oh yeah, you're right, absolutely. But never in all my prompt, they figured out where was the issue. They went several times through it, but couldn't find the issue. So I understand exactly what you mean, but there is some certain limitation. How much time are you going to spend doing that? How much time the prompt is going to are you going to prompt to find these things where you can double check yourself? I mean, if you trust Gemini to do it 100%, like I said, you can do it blindly, but I will never do that. I know he did an amazing job in extracting the text, but if I give him another text with a different font, with a different formatting, with different things, I will always double check. So I will say, always check. Even whatever prompt you come up with, don't trust AI to extract perfectly the text.
Yeah, it's a good point. We have to stand behind our work. At the end of the day, it's our work, and we have to be confident and not cannot ever rely 100% on what AI is doing because it's just a little bit too dangerous to do that. Okay, let's see. Divya has a question. Would traditional data analysis tools such as SPSS still be relevant for evaluation in the future? So now this is a question, it sounds like it's from potentially an evaluator. We are here talking about using AI, and adjacent to evaluations, which is the communication and dissemination. So I'm not feeling qualified to answer that question. This would be for more of our evaluation team. So it's a good question. Let's see, Arunjana wants to weigh in.
I actually did use SPSS several years ago, but unfortunately, I still don't have an answer to that question. One could imagine that some of the things that SPSS does could be automated by an AI tool, or there could be an AI sort of assist or agent that's part of SPSS. I could imagine that, but as of now, I don't think we're seeing that. I'll stop there.
Yeah, thanks, Arunjana. So let me go back to Slido. We have one other poll question that we wanted to ask you, and please keep the questions coming in the meantime. Let me share my screen one more time and get to our question. So we're curious, what's your next step in using AI to support your work? Maybe you heard something here today, or maybe you had already planned something and you're in the midst of that. Let us know what you're doing with AI. We'd love to get ideas from you as well. I'll give you a moment to answer that question. I see in the meantime, someone's asked if AI's been cost effective for us. And I do think it definitely is a time saver as long as you're using it on the right task. I think, Joanna, you're the one who said it saved you you were doing things in about half the time. I think that the tricky thing is figuring out what's the task where it will save you time, and that requires you investing time to do that. It's a great question, and it's ongoing because it keeps evolving. Oh, we have a lot of great comments coming in. A lot of experimenting. Improving skills, which is ongoing. Developed a prompt modeling tool to support my team more effectively in AI and mail workflows. Super interesting. If you would like to tell us more about any of these next steps in chat, we'd love to also hear more. A lot of experimenting and comparing too. This is definitely, I feel like at the beginning, when we first started using we had ChatGPT, everyone was focused on ChatGPT, and now there's so many models. So now a big part of working with AI is testing models and seeing which is producing the type of responses that you're looking for. Go ahead, Alex.
One thing I wanted to emphasize is please test as much as you can, but for example, don't test on something confidential, because as soon as you send it to AI, it will be shared with everyone, and that's the thing you shouldn't do. So if you have to test on something you already worked on, it's a report, it's live, it's a public domain, so you will have the possibility to test it. Please do not test something that is confidential, except if, like the World Bank, we have closed loop AI that all the documents are not going to the different companies. That would be my recommendation.
That is an excellent point, to be very careful when you're using AI to understand what's happening with the information that you're inputting into AI. We have someone else saying they're going to try translations. We didn't talk about translations today, but that is definitely a very powerful way to use these tools, and using AI to review old data. All right. So a lot of great ideas in there. Thank you for sharing that with us. I'm going to stop sharing and we'll go back into the main room one more time and see if there are any other questions. Oh, we have a comment from Jesse. Bad outputs often come from bad prompts. This is excellent advice. Worked with Claude to develop an interactive tool in a shared Claude project, which allows team members to write in natural and precise language as they need. The prompt builder asks follow-up questions and then produces a precise prompt designed to produce the best output, given the explained context and needs. This sounds like a very useful tool. I've also had similar experiences when people are saying that the tool didn't work, and was it the tool didn't work, or was it that the prompt wasn't very well written? You saw in that prompt that Joanna shared earlier that she gave AI an example, and this is another great way to strengthen the prompt, is to show it what is the output you're looking for, be very specific, and then it knows how to follow. There are also prompts you can write to have the tool, have your AI tool help you write the prompt. You can ask it questions about what's missing from this prompt. What are some of the elements that would help strengthen this prompt? So use AI to help you with your prompting. That's a great example. So I don't see any other questions. Going once, going twice. Well, we thank you so much for joining us today. And before we wrap up, Arunjana's going to add something. Go ahead.
My apologies. I'm like that person in class who raises her hand right before class is over. Just wanted to reiterate that it's important to remember that as we are training AI, we're kind of also training ourselves. So it is a bit of a change for us as well in learning how to use AI tools effectively. And Jesse's comment about the prompt builder is an excellent example of that. I will stop there.
Yeah. And while you were talking, we have another question from Will. And considering the responsible use of AI, do you factor in the demand on resources, along with ensuring accuracy and validity of results? I believe, Will, you're referring to environmental resources. I believe that's where you're going with this question. And this is definitely a consideration why we really are very targeted if we're going to use AI to do something that's resource heavy, like generate videos. It's very rare that we do that, but it is a consideration. Wondering if we'll have access to the record. Thank you, Adriana, for asking that, because I had forgotten to mention that this session is recorded. We will share the resources, and the slides will be posted on the Glocal platform. That will be the easiest way to get to them. I believe it will take a few days for those to all get posted, but when this session ends, we will send over to the Glocal organizers and go back to the Glocal website to get our recording and slides. All right. Thank you so much for joining us today. Really appreciate all the questions and the comments and all the ideas that you shared in the polls. And let me thank Joanna, Alex, and Arunjana for sharing these examples and how you're sharing with us your AI journey. And look forward to continuing that journey with you. Have a great rest of your day, everyone, and enjoy the rest of Glocal Week. Thanks.
Bye, everyone.
Thanks, everyone. Have a good day.